Good morning. As usual, I'd like to talk to everyone about the week gone by and the week upcoming. And it's, I think, a pretty smooth transition this week as to where we go. Last week, we concentrated on the concept of culture. And I think culture is probably one of the, if not the most powerful driving force in how a lot of organizations operate, how they set themselves up, how they attract people, how they retain people, and essentially how they do business. And that is a very dominant factor. And we saw it come up in many different ways. We looked at how whether one style was dominant, whether things when the discussion of idea was interesting. We talked about a lot about being an innovative climate, a kind of free thinking climate, versus some organizations where that's not maybe the best thing. But then what works for each business, what works for value creation, what works for the employees, what works for the customers, what works for all the different stakeholders. And culture is a very slow developing thing. It's a very hard thing to change. As you can see, I'm wearing one of my coach's outfits here, and one of the things I always laugh about is when read the sports page and a team hires a new coach and he comes in and says, "I'm gonna change the culture around here." Yeah, hope you got a long-term contract because that's how long it does take to change a culture. Cultures develop over years, over decades, over centuries, and in business, it really depends a lot on the markets and the external environment as well. So it's a multifaceted feature. Now, why did I say it transitions smoothly? Because this week in Unit 4, we're going to switch over to the idea of competency. And competencies are things that you do, aren't they? They are things that you do well. And one of the core ideas is the core competency. A core competency is something that an individual or an organization does particularly, actually, even singularly well. This is the best thing we do. This is what we concentrate on. And a lot of it depends on the culture of the organization, the culture of its markets, and state of the art, as we call it. It's a really important topic because sometimes we see organizations that have found their core competency, understand it well, and thrive. We've seen other organizations that found their core competency, but maybe the technology in the marketplace passed it by and they stubbornly cling to it. And suddenly that thriving turns into struggling. Some just never really get a hold on what the one thing they simply want to do well or can do well and keep jumping between things and reach a level of moderate success in many things rather than ultimate success in one. So we're going to look at quite a few different examples, and the discussion this week is going to be about a very almost a household name. It's going to be about a company, Starbucks, that most of us know about. And one of the things I really want to urge people, as usual, keep thinking in the big picture frame, not in the small picture frame. Don't get caught up in the products. Don't get caught up in the consumer model. Look a little deeper as we go through things, as you will also in the larger picture in the text. I want to compliment most people on being able to do that in your discussions and in your papers, keeping the focus up at that higher level plane. That's what we really need to see. Sometimes we tend to trail off and get caught up in what we know from the marketplace or what we know from our own consumer experience in many ways. That's not necessarily the true picture or the entire picture of what an organization is all about. So I think people are doing a much better job of that, keeping their focus on the upper level of the spectrum of things to consider. So with that being said, I think we're on a normal schedule this week. It is class I noticed shrunk a little bit. A couple of people have apparently dropped for whatever reasons, and so we're down to a few. So that massive interaction that sometimes you can get in a discussion board of 20 people, I recognize that's not going to happen. I understand the fact that with only 7 students and 1 instructor, our conversations are going to be a little bit limited. You have noticed that sometimes I do ask the same question of several people. That's an attempt to, one, show what I think is important, and number two, it's purposeful, and I think it allows people to see how others are responding to the same stimulus, and what can we do to expand our thinking. The discussion board is not to report, it's to expand our thinking. And that's what I think we really want to keep in mind. The assignment also changes this week. It is not a uh, paper, it is a PowerPoint, it is a presentation. And presentation is a very, very important skill in business. Believe me, it is. It may seem like it's a little simpler because we're going to do things, and just put together a 10 slide PowerPoint. Sometimes putting together a 10 slide PowerPoint is a lot more difficult than putting together a 20 slide PowerPoint. So brevity is important, clarity is important, getting as much detail as you need to convey your message is important. Having a good narrative is important. All these things are in that assignment, and allows us to get some practice. So again, thank you for your attention last week. Thank you for your work. And if you have any questions, please contact me. Thank you.